All right. Welcome back. So I hope everybody's been having a wonderful week. I know the stock market's been a little bit chaotic this week. So the coronavirus has definitely created a lot of activity in the market. And so I'm sure there's been lots of opportunity to trade, and there's probably been lots of opportunities to hold your breath and go, what is going on? So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Regardless, today is kind of a special day. We're going to be kicking off a new series for the channel. So basically, I would say for the last, I almost want to say 6 months, probably more than that. For basically the last 6 months, we've been covering a particular API that was associated with a trading platform. That trading platform was TD Ameritrade. And it was a great API. I think basically out of all the series I think I've ever done on this channel, that series was by far my most successful. So obviously it told me one thing: people definitely want to see how to use these APIs. They want to know how they can use these APIs in their everyday trading activity to basically, enhance their performance when it comes to trading, or just, I would say at the end of the day, making their trading strategies more disciplined, right? So it's basically improving what they're already doing. And so there was definitely a lot of demand for it, but we also saw that it wasn't a perfect API. So there were definitely some limitations. Probably the biggest and most frustrating for people was you could not use your paper account when it came to the API. So if you wanted to do simulated trading, you couldn't. There wasn't a way to do that with the TD Ameritrade API. And for some who trade futures, we found out that you cannot trade futures using the API. So you cannot trade futures using the TD API. And I actually found out some news this morning, and it's kind of sad to hear, but it doesn't look like we'll actually be able to get level 2 futures. So unfortunately, I think we can get most of the other level 2 data from that API, but level 2 futures does not seem to be achievable at this point. At least that's what somebody who was basically reaching out on my behalf got an answer from TD Ameritrade. So with that, again, I'm not here to bash TD Ameritrade API. I think it's still a great API. I think it's still really useful, but there's obviously some limitations if you're trading certain, financial instruments. So because of that, I do want to kind of start branching out and exploring other brokerage APIs. We're going to kick off our next series by covering the Interactive Brokers API. So this is another web API that we can use to basically automate different aspects of our trading strategy, right? So with this web API, we can manage our account. So that means we can get information about it. We can set different activity preferences about our particular account. We could I'm trying to think what else we can do, like orders, we can get data, a whole bunch of different stuff. So it's definitely very useful. And then obviously, if there's certain activities that you're trying to automate related to your trading, this is a great way of doing that. However, with Interactive Broker, they actually offer multiple APIs. I think altogether, I think it's about 4 different APIs. I'm not going to cover all the APIs because one of them, you have to basically be a third-party client. So you basically have to have like your own company in order to access it. They have an API that is dedicated to their trader workstation application. So that's basically Interactive Broker's equivalent to Thinkorswim. And so that API is dedicated just to that application. So you can access all the functionality of that application using that API. And so again, there's some advantages and disadvantages to that. And then on top of that, they also have a web API. So this is one where you do not, I'm going to repeat that again, you do not have to have the trader workstation installed on your system in order to use it. And then they finally have, I think it's called like a client portal API. So this is like, it's kind of confusing because like you hear client portal multiple times, like when you're using the web API, but this is basically like a very, very lean version of that API. So that way you can do all the functionality, but you're getting such a lean version that if performance is of the utmost importance, you would basically use that API. Now, from our perspective, we're just going to be covering the web API, and I'll kind of elaborate as to why I think we should be using the web API. But with that being said, I will say this video, don't expect much coding. This is just going to give us context, understand kind of what's out there, what do we need to download. I'm also going to share the particular Python client library that I currently have on GitHub. So I'm going to show you how to install it. And then I'm also going to show you how to pull changes as I make them. So that way, as things happen and, because, this is still early stages. I mean, I want to put that out there. It's definitely not finished, but as we kind of add more things to it, you can easily incorporate those changes and then start using the library up until a certain extent, basically. So just keep that in mind. Not a lot of coding in this video, more background information and getting you set up before we actually start coding. So with that being said, we're going to take the first couple minutes. We're going to explore the Interactive Brokers website a little bit, and we'll download some stuff. All right. Okay. So let's imagine for a second that you're a new person. You've never, ever gone on the internet before, and you type in Interactive Brokers. You go to this wonderful website, and you see this, and you're like, wow, what do they all offer? Well, you look around a little bit, you sign up for an account, and you're like, oh, this is great. I got a new account. And what kind of technology and products do they offer, right? So if you click products, you can see all their products that they're offering. They offer a lot of products. And you got technology, right? And so from technology, you can see that they have trading platforms, TWS software. So this stands for Trader Workstation Software. And again, just to kind of reiterate again, this is basically Interactive Brokers equivalent to Thinkorswim with TD Ameritrade. And then you also have trading APIs, order types and algos, and then smart routing. Now, there's a lot here, but we're going to focus on just the trading APIs. So you click trading APIs and you come to this wonderful page and you kind of look at it and you're like, oh, okay, Interactive Broker API software. And, you do what any reasonable person would do. You say, oh, get API software. And so you get it. This will actually download a copy of the particular API software that you want to use. So they have one for Mac and they also have one for Windows. You can also contribute if you would like. And then with this, you have the latest, you have the stable one, and then you have beta. Now, depending on which language you have to use, you might have to download a different one. So if you want to use Python, for example, that's technically the beta one. At least I still think it is. But it's very important to understand. So you might naturally want to just download this one. You have to keep in mind that this is exclusively for the Trader Workstation API. So it's very important to understand that. This is actually for the Trader Workstation API, and you can even see it on the name. This is not, and again, I'm going to emphasize this is not for the web API. So if you download this one, it is assumed that you also have Trader Workstation installed on your system. If you do not have it installed on your system, you cannot use this API. So when would you maybe want to use this, and when would you maybe not want to use this? You would obviously want to use this if you have the Trader Workstation application on your system and you don't want access to all the endpoints. So there are certain endpoints that you will only find on the web API. For Trader Workstation, there are some APIs that are not going to be available to you. So again, I'm going to emphasize that there are certain endpoints that will not be available on the Trader Workstation API. So if you download this one, you might not get everything. Now, if you do want to see kind of what's available to you, there are reference guides. So if you go to the API reference guide down here, you'll actually be taken to a new page and you can see all the documentation related to the Trader Workstation API. Now, I'm not going to go through all this because obviously the series is not focused on that, but you can kind of clearly see they do have it written for multiple languages. And on top of that, you can see they give us a lot of capabilities, things like being able to access this from Excel, real-time data servers, dynamic data exchange, ActiveX. So there's obviously a lot there, and there's obviously a lot of ways to incorporate it probably in your existing workflows. You just have to keep in mind you're not going to have access to everything. You'll have access to most of the things. And I would say most of the core things like orders, things like, streaming market data, historical market data. So you're going to have most of what you need. However, you're not going to have access to all of it. Additionally, I have had people reach out to me in the past. I've heard mixed reviews about the Trader Workstation API. I think a lot of what it comes down to is how comfortable you are with coding to begin with. I think it's a relatively large Python library, especially if you're new to Python. It's very easy to get overwhelmed just because there's so much there. It's kind of surprising because there is a lot of documentation here, but it's just easy. It's just easy to get confused, and I can see why people were maybe having challenges with it. So don't beat yourself up if you find that, wow, this is taking a lot of time just to get up and running. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. I haven't heavily used it, but for the few times that I have used it, I will say, yeah, it's relatively large. You just have to keep that in mind, and you have to understand that you're not going to necessarily kind of just jump into it. So just keep that in mind when you're using the API. You might be realizing it's going to take you a little bit of time just kind of get caught up in everything. So while this is the API that is associated with the trader workstation, there are technically other APIs that are available to you. So if you go to another page, where is it? There is a page that is dedicated to REST APIs. And so with the REST APIs, there are basically different categories of them. So there's multiple REST APIs. Additionally, you do need to be signed up for IBKR, so Interactive Brokers Pro account. You do have to have a Pro account. You cannot have a light account to use their API. In fact, I'm pretty sure you still got to have a Pro account if you want to use the Trade Workstation API. So just assume if you want to use any of the APIs, you're going to have to sign up for Interactive Broker Pro. So just, again, keep in mind. Now, here, there's two categories. You have the client portal web API, and then you have the third-party web API. Don't worry about third-party web API, because this is basically like if I was a company and I wanted to go out there and say, hey, I want to incorporate your technology into my application, right? Then you would be using the third-party web API. The benefit of doing this, you actually have control over the authentication process. This one, you will see, it gets you all... It's one of the few APIs I've ever worked with. I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. They basically require that you have Java installed on your system. We will walk through that. Just keep that in mind. It's frustrating, but you will need Java installed on your system in order to use the Interactive Broker API, the web API at least. You do not need Java installed in order to use it from here on the Trade Workstation. But of course, naturally, you're going to be asking, why would I want to use the client portal then? It seems like it's more of a headache. It goes back to the fact of there are more endpoints that will be available using the web API, so using the REST API. Additionally, you don't need to basically have any special libraries or anything like that. You can basically write it in whatever language you want. And as long as you have the server downloaded, you can use it. Now, they do have in their documentation that maybe at some point we will get lucky and they will actually allow us to do the authentication portion of interacting with the API through our own end. But currently, right now, at the time of recording this video, we do have to do it the way they want to. And so basically, you'll see right here, they have a small headless gateway to connect to your application. It's not required for everybody, but basically for you and me, the small people, we do have to have it. So just keep in mind. And then additionally, they do tell you that you're going to get some existing endpoints that you're not going to have through the Trade Workstation as well. So transaction, portfolio analysis, and things like that. So there's a couple things that you're going to have to download. The first is the actual Gateway API. So to install the Gateway API, it's very simple. You just go right here, you click it. It's going to prompt you that it's going to basically download a zip folder. So right now, I'm just going to put this in my folder, and we'll just leave it there for right now. So it's pretty light. It's not going to take very long. It's really quick. And then from here, there's a couple other pieces of information. They do have a beta API, so there is a beta one. This is obviously where they're releasing new features that aren't currently in the stable version. I haven't used the beta one too heavily yet, but for the most part, it's kind of relatively the same. So just, again, be aware of it. They also have a guide. So this is a web API guide. This will basically take you to some documentation that will show you the different endpoints and how to use these endpoints. They also allow you to download the API specification. So this will basically download all the endpoints and all the fun stuff, so that way you don't have to put in as much work. I mean, it's okay, but there's good and bad to that. So we'll talk about that at some point. But you can see they obviously have different things. So some is related to the session, some is related to customer information, portfolio analysis. That's pretty cool. This is the one thing I don't like about Edge right now. It's this website does not work on it. They have trades, portfolio, account, order. They also have something cool, a scanner. So somebody actually reached out to me this morning and they were talking like, hey, do you know of any like firms that offer a scanner? Lo and behold, Interactive Broker does offer a scanner. So this will be a way for you to scan and basically set criteria for you to get some information about potential instruments you might be interested in. So I'm really excited to kind of cover some of these topics because I know in the TD Ameritrade API, we didn't have access to this, but I think with some of this, it's going to be really cool. For us, we have contracts now. So contracts are kind of going to be like our symbols. So if we want to get information about our symbols, we have to get the contract info, the contract ID. There's market data history. We can go down to 1 minute. So some of this documentation is actually very misleading. It will say, oh, we'll just pass through 5 minutes. You can technically go lower. You can do orders. Orders are important. You can do trades. Well, you can basically see the trades you've made. And then you have portfolio. So you can see portfolio positions, account summary. You can see accounts, sub-accounts. So again, this is also advantageous. Say you have multiple accounts or sub-accounts. You can specify which account you want to trade with. Additionally, you know that really frustrating problem? You can't use paper trading accounts, right? You can't use them on TD. You can use paper trading on this one, and I will show you how to use paper trading. So this is probably the biggest selling point for most people right now. So of all the headaches we're gonna have to go through, the biggest advantage to this is we get access to a paper trading account. That means we can make all the screw ups in the world and we're not gonna lose any actual money. So that's exciting for some of us, especially for me, right? So we can do all the testing in the world. We can make our scripts as horrible as could be, and we will not actually lose any real money. So very advantageous, very, very advantageous. We also have accounts. So this is things like portfolio accounts, brokerages accounts, P&Ls, account summary information. And we'll see the headache of dealing with that. Trust me, it's not going to be exciting. I can promise you that. Customer entity info, session. This is all going to be a pain. I'm just kidding. It's not too bad, but it's different. And then we also have FYIs. So I guess this is like their way of, for your information. I don't know. It's something different. I haven't honestly used it that much, but I guess it's something where you can change your subscriptions that you've subscribed to. I would consider it like account management, but beyond just like basic, orders and trades. It's like you're trying to enable certain, subscriptions or functionality that you might not currently have enabled. That's kind of how I would describe it. But I do encourage you, when you get a chance, read through the documentation. It's pretty straightforward for the most part. At least it's up to date. I'm not going to say who, but at least it's up to date for the most part. Additionally, they also have another basically like get starting page. So this get starting page is basically another, I would say, documentation. And so this is basically like where I go to most of the time. This is where they tell you how to get everything up and running. It looks easy, and it kind of is, but it makes a lot of assumptions behind the scenes. And so I've kind of already documented what you need to do from your end. And so we'll kind of go through it. I'm still adding to it because obviously, like, I know people are going to do it. They're going to be like, hey, I didn't know that I was supposed to do that. That obviously gives me feedback. I'm saying like, okay, obviously if people can't figure that out, then we got a problem. But basically they're going to tell you the requirements. So what you need to download. They're going to tell you how to launch the gateway. Because remember, our gateway at this point is basically going to be our mechanism for us to basically authenticate ourselves with interactive brokers and say like, hey, we have permission to use this API, so like let us use it, and things like that. So this is very useful, very helpful, and it does definitely make our lives a little bit easier. So just keep that in mind. There's a couple different things that we're going to have to do. I would say at this point, the biggest thing you do want to make sure that you have installed is going to be Java. Personally, what do I have? Java. Yeah. I think it was Red Hat. I would do Red Hat. I haven't had too many problems with Red Hat. I thought it was pretty straightforward, but again, I think it's just kind of up to you how you want to do it. Personally, like I said, when I did this, I just thought it was easy. I didn't think it was that hard to kind of get, just getting everything downloaded and stuff like that. But what you're going to want to do is, let me just actually backtrack a little bit. Let's just do Red Hat Java download. They will have a download for you. And so you can basically just go to this one. So just type in Red Hat Java download and then go to Open JDK download. And it will take you here. You just want to make sure you download it. There's a couple here. So there's one for Windows 8. Where is it? There's Windows 32-bit, or sorry, yeah, not Windows 8. OpenJDK 8, sorry, not Windows 8. And then obviously 64-bit. And then this is the Microsoft installer. This is just a zip file. For the most part, I would just do the Microsoft installer. I think that's more than adequate. I mean, you can download the zip if you want, but again, personally, just make it easy on yourself. Download this. And it's going to ask you to log in. So, just keep that in mind. And then I'll just put in my email and like, okay, like, ooh, this is all great and dandy, right? So you do have to have an account, but it's free. I mean, you don't have to, sign up for anything or anything like that. But, it's just right here for you. Okay, perfect. And so it's going to ask you to download it and then, just do it as is. It's going to take a little bit. It's not crazy long, but I have fast internet speed, so mine usually downloads pretty quick. But once you do this, we're going to have to also install it, right? So this is, again, you only have to do it once and then you don't have to worry about it. And then I'll have some documentation on there, putting some links, putting some stuff on there. Obviously, if you're on Mac, it might be slightly different. I personally don't have a Mac, so it's kind of hard to say. I'm pushing my friends to tell me what they need to do. I think you guys are going to have to use Homebrew, if I remember correctly, or something like that. Just go next, I accept, next, all this stuff. And then you basically just keep going next, and install. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to install it again. It's really simple. You just got to do that, and then you should be good to go. And then once you've done that, you should be okay for the most part. You might have to do some path setups in case something happens, but I think it's going to do it for you by default. So you should be okay. But if you run into anything where it's like, I can't find Java or anything like that, it's more than likely the path just wasn't set. So just, keep that in mind. So at that point, you have Java, you have the gateway. That's really the only two things that you need at this point in order to kind of get yourself up and running. And so once you have those two components, you'll be good. And then we can kind of go through just a very simple example of like, hey, how do we get this thing set up, right? So, just keep that in mind. It's, again, not too bad. But again, I think this can be a little bit deceiving. It makes it look like it's easy, but it's not. Additionally, when it comes to the paper trading, I'll put up some documentation. It's basically you just have to enable some stuff on your account. So basically from the client portal, you do have to go to settings. You're going to go to account settings, and then you're going to go to paper trading account, and then you're going to go to configure. And so with the paper trading account, you're going to have two things. You're going to have a paper trading username and a paper trading password. I'll show you what you're going to have to do in order to basically use the API to kind of give you an idea of what this is going to look like when you log in. Because basically all you're going to be doing is you're going to be specifying that you want to use your paper account when you're logging into the API. And once you've done that, you'll be good to go. So with that though, I think I've went clearly over the time limit. Oh, of course I did. So at this point, if you run into any issues when you're downloading anything, feel free to put them down in the comments below. Obviously, I don't want to leave you too hanging. Just make sure you have things like enabled correctly on your system. So obviously, you might want to make sure that, maybe run it as admin if you're running into issues. That's usually a big thing, especially on Windows. Mac, I'll help you as best I can. I am not too familiar with Mac entirely, so I know enough to kind of get around, but for all the little secrets and inner workings, I'm probably not the person to ask, but I can maybe get my friends to help me out a little bit. Justin, if you're watching this, I'm giving you credit because Justin helped me a lot when it came to the Mac stuff. So thank you, Justin. Everybody say thank you, Justin. Yeah, he was really nice. He was really helpful with that. But yeah, again, if you run into any issues, obviously put them down in the comments below. And then also, I do have it available. I'm going to cover this in the next video. But if you go to my repository, so if you go to GitHub and then my username, you will see basically all the repositories that I have active. So you can either get them from here, or if you go here, you can see everything else. So most of these are private. So these are just, stuff I work on for clients. Funny enough, somebody actually got me access to TradeStation, so I'm building a API client for them too. So it's funny. I have Interactive Broker. I'll have TD Ameritrade, and then TradeStation. So I'm getting quite the collection of Python API clients for all these brokerage firms. But obviously, you want to go to the one that's Interactive Broker, Python API, and then we'll talk about how we can clone this in the next one. But you'll find things here just basically about what you can do with it, any type of requirements. And then I'll make sure to put some links down here as well. And then I also have a link to downloading the portal client. And then I have some very simple examples of using it, and then some documentation links and stuff like that. Ooh, no. Don't go back like that. Okay, there we go. Perfect. And then I also have some resources in here as well. So I do have samples. These are like more installation notes. So if you want to install it and stuff like that. So again, we'll kind of go through that when we get there. So again, hopefully there's just enough information for you. All right. So we will see you in part 2.